Are we live yet? All right, perfect. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this. Been looking forward to it. My good friend, Nikki Miller. And we're going to talk today about winning at home and winning at work. Like, how do you live big lives, both places? How do you not give up even an inch? And then, like, candidly, when you find that you have given up an inch or a mile sometimes, how do you get it back? Like, how do you recover? How quickly can you move back to like a baseline of, all right, I got way out of balance on this, or I got way out of bounds on this. So Nikki, you and I did this on Clubhouse a couple of weeks ago, and that was fun. And then we thought, well, let's do it here. And then that way it's recorded and people can watch it live. By the way, while you're watching live, we have two people on both sides who are going to be reading questions or comments. If you've got something that one of us could respond to, throw it in the chat box. Like we'll do the best we can to give, like, we'll just give our opinion for it. But remember, you paid nothing to be here. So every single bit of advice ends with you get what you paid for. So it's like, you can't be upset.
The best free advice that anyone's ever gotten.
Right. Like my favorite thing to say is, here, take my advice. I'm not using it anyway. So yeah, take that. All right. So if we can help with that, but all right, Nikki, tell us about who you are and what's been going on in your life a little bit, how we got here today.
Yeah, so it's funny because Clubhouse obviously is this new platform, and I don't think either of us has ever felt older than we did. We were like, we're on the Clubhouse. We figured it out. We made it.
Correction, trying to pair my AirPods this morning when they would not pair. That's when I felt the oldest.
That's when you bring in your kids though, Cody. Like that's literally what your girls are
like
there
they
for.
Connect to the car, then they're back on the phone, and then I want to throw it all out the window. Like I never feel older than that moment.
Or when you're trying to get your password in and you try every password that you know, and then it says create a new password, you create the one that you always use, and you're like, oh, you can't use the same password, and then you just throw your computer out the window and start over. So,
but I can top that one too, because I was at the airport a day ago or whatever it was, and I'm walking through the airport and someone walks up and tells me my flashlight is on my phone. That is the ultimate oldest place to be. So yeah, I'm hitting them all, like all of them. I'm getting them all.
You need to slip a couple dad jokes in there, and then you'll really like complete the silo. So how we got here is Cody is, as all of you know, an incredible human being, and I'm privileged to be here. And I basically threw up on Facebook. I said, hey, I want to do a Clubhouse, want to get on this new platform, and what would you guys want to hear, and who would you want to hear it with? And a few people jumped on and commented and asked, you and Cody should do something about living a big life at home and at work. And I'm new to the job. I'm a new mom. I have a 10-month-old daughter, and it's been an incredible life change. And I've had a lot of growth in a short period of time in order to reorient myself to this new life that I have. In the process of having my daughter and dealing with COVID, I stepped out of a team leader role where I was running a $1 billion brokerage, and then stepped back into running my team, where we have expansion partners through all of Northern and Southern California and soon to be Central California. And a couple of other businesses that I run, and now I'm in very quickly needed to learn how to reorient my life around this new person that's incredibly important to me, and it was a real fundamental shift in where I spent my time, my energy, my belief system, all of those things. And I thought, well, I'm new to the job, but I'll talk about what I've learned, and I'd love to learn from someone who's not new to the job and who is killing it, not only as a dad but obviously as a business person. And so I couldn't think of anyone better to get to sit on this webinar with, Cody.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So I've got three, 19, which is crazy to me. Like 19, like that's a young man cub. 19, 12 in a couple of days, and 9. And in ways, they're all going on 30. And in ways, they're all going on 5. Like I've also learned that doesn't change either.
Yeah. Or any of us, right?
Yeah. My son's like, hey, Dad, can I borrow the convertible for my date? I know that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, cool. When? He goes, right now. I'm like, what do you mean right now? Like my stress level just went from here to here. Like, tell me you need it like in 2 days or something. Like, come on, man. Yeah. Just right. Yeah. But you know what, probably like what I would start with would be this. I've done lots of things right, and I've done lots of things wrong. And I don't think either one of those is going to stop anytime soon. I do believe this. I do believe the biggest lesson I've learned around winning at work and winning at home is that you have to be appropriate in the moment. Like, I don't know about you, Nikki, but like if I'm working, it's real tough for me to bounce back and forth and try to handle everything at once. And I just have to almost breathe and just remind myself to go in little sprints, like whether it's 30 minutes or an hour or just like little sprints. It's like, listen, this problem will still be here in an hour. This problem will still be here at lunchtime when my calendar frees up. But at the end of the day, if I don't do that, like if I'm not appropriate in the moment, I don't know about you, but the stories I tell myself in my head and the stress level that I allow myself to go to, then nothing gets done. Like I get so wound up. I mean, I don't even know if like you are not an entrepreneur and you are not a parent if you have never driven down the road and screamed at the windshield of your car about something and been like so upset and then been like, I'm so glad that nobody saw me do that. Like you just have to like let something, you're just like, you're so frustrated like in that moment, right? But being appropriate. And for me, I'll tell this story real quick. Like it hit me like a ton of bricks. I won't lie. I have a leg up when it comes to being a dad. I have a leg up. And the reason for that is that when I met Gavin's mom, like when we had Gavin, we were so young, then we didn't have the girls for like 7 or 8 years. And so I've had like this giant age gap. So like when parents tell you, so like Nikki, you've got, is it 10 months?
10 months. Yeah.
Yeah. So a parent might tell you right now, you know, hey, savor this time, like enjoy every moment. The time goes fast. And to a degree, you hear it and you know it, but knowing it here and knowing it here are two different things.
Totally.
As I've been raising the girls 7 or 8 years behind Gavin, like my perspective is not that time goes fast. My perspective is time went fast. Like I've already hit the milestone where your kid no longer thinks you're a hero and just needs to borrow some money or borrow the car. And like I was reading his text, like he's not on here, so I'll tell on him. I was reading his text from borrowing the car. He's polite. He's kind. He said, "Hey, Dad, hope you're doing well." I mean, like he's doing all the things. He learned
right? From the best, Cody. Like he's getting ready for the pitch. Like you have to know where he got this from. At least be proud of that.
Yeah. And so, but he was probably 6, and all of you can probably relate to this, right? Pulled into the driveway. He was 6 years old. I'm on my Motorola StarTAC. Like it's an important call. I had like the extra battery. I had the antenna that came out that made the call, actually made the call better, which I wish we still had antennas because I've just felt better about it. I walked into the house and Gavin comes screaming around the corner because I'm his hero. And I give him the parent Heisman. And you can just watch it in his face. Excitement, love, can't wait to see you. Been waiting to see the car pull up. To disappointment. And like in that moment, I'd already been at KW for maybe 18 months. And for me, that's when real self-development in my story like truly showed up. It was KW. There's lots of places to get it, but for me, that was mine. And as I'm watching it drain from his face, what I'm hearing in the back of my mind are words about being appropriate in the moment, God, family, business, like you can't sacrifice this to sacrifice all those things, right? And I remember just saying, I gotta go. And today I can tell you the story as if it happened yesterday, but I cannot tell you who I was on the phone with. That's how insignificant it is. Like in the moment, I'm sure it felt like a really important call, but later couldn't even tell you who it was. And I hung up the phone. And for me, that's when I said, I'm never going to walk in the house on the phone again. And if I could just at 19, if he would just run around the corner and greet me like that again, which is never going to happen again, but I would trade anything to get it back. Doesn't happen that way. Like that's not how life works.
Yeah.
But for me, that was, I'm never walking in the door. And that was one of my non-negotiables. So Nikki, when you first said, let's talk about winning at work and at home, my mind goes to, cool, what are the non-negotiables? Because almost everything in my world is negotiable. Maybe this, maybe that. Like I live in a gray world, just like you do as salespeople, right? but what are the things that I'm unfreaking willing to negotiate? And that's been one of them for me.
It's funny, Cody, because I had the privilege of taking Bold with you when I was like, 50 seconds into real estate as a brand new agent. And you told that story and I never forgot it. And to have carried that, I mean, not only how important is it to share our stories like that so that other people may benefit, but I've carried that story with me since I took it with you long before I was a parent.
Well, and all that stuff, like it's all going to be there tomorrow. Like those problems aren't going to go away.
Yeah. And I think what was interesting to me when people asked us to do this webinar was that I thought to myself, how weird that we separate success at work and at home. Because to me, they're all the same principles, aren't they? Like the ability to differentiate between what really matters, and what doesn't. Well, we need that skill everywhere. The ability to be here and give ourselves permission to be nowhere else. We need that ability everywhere, don't we? I mean, to me, it's wasted skills if we learn something for work and don't use it at home. We can't become one person at work and then take that armor off and take that suit off and then walk in the door and be someone entirely different. I mean, first of all, like I just don't have the capacity. I don't have the energy to be somebody different everywhere that I show up. And what a gift to yourself, to the people around you, to your kids, to the people that you lead or are in business with, to show up consistently, for them to know the type of person that they can count on you to be. And I remember when I first became a mom, I had all these people ask me to come on and do whatever, like talks like this, or I went on a podcast with another female entrepreneur who runs a big tech business, and they asked her about being a mom. She has a young son. And she said, it's interesting because I've realized that no matter what, I'm always failing at something. Because right now here being with you guys, I'm failing at being a mom. I'm physically not with my daughter. I'm not interacting with her, so I'm failing. And if I'm with her, then I'm failing at being a leader. I'm failing at being a business person because I'm not spending time on or in the business, right? And so I made an agreement with myself very early on that I love your word unwilling, that I was unwilling to fail at multiple things at once. That's the agreement I made with myself. And to me, that's how I see your idea of differentiating between what matters and what doesn't. I'm just unwilling to fail at multiple things at once. And what I mean by that is that if I'm here, I'm going to give myself permission to be here and nowhere else. I'm here with you. I'm not also trying to interact with my daughter. I'm not also trying to check in with her and be with her, because then I'm splitting my attention and therefore failing at both. And when I'm with her, I'm not answering messages and trying to lead my team and trying to be somewhere else, because then I'm failing at both. So I'm just unwilling to fail at multiple things. If I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail fantastically at one thing at a time. How do you see that? Like,
I think about it like, have you ever gone bowling and you're willing to admit it to people in public? Like if you go bowling, like they have the bumpers that come up on the sides of the gutters. And so I think about like in life, and I think about in business, like how do I do it in such a way that I control where the bumpers are? Like I control that they're right in front of the gutter. Like I could throw the ball, it could go here, it could go there. I have no idea how many pins I'm going to knock down. Like half of the stuff I try to do, I have no idea how it's going to work. Like, is this going to happen or that going to happen? I don't freaking know. But I do know, as long as I keep the ball out of the gutter, as long as I don't throw a gutter ball, it's going to knock over something. Something's going to happen down there. Something's going to work. Eventually, I'm either going to get lucky, I'm going to get better, eventually it's going to improve. But if I can just control the gutters, if I can just control no wasted shots, if I can just control no ultimate loses, in the first time I heard Gary teach Quantum Leap, he talked about juggling all these balls of life, right? And he's like, you've got work, family, school, spirituality, you have faith, you've got money, you have all these things. Like we've all got our stuff. And ultimately, whether you want to look at it as juggling balls or whether you want to look at it as the story of the big rocks in the jar, like whatever analogy you want to use, they're all sort of the same. But the thing that still stands out in my mind that I think about is he made the comment, Nikki, he's like, listen, you could drop any of these and you could probably pick it back up. You could drop work. He told me once, I'm 40 today. when I was 31, like I knew I was 30. I was 30 something, but I wasn't 30 very far. So I was like 31. And I said, blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me and he goes, Cody, you're so young. You could screw this thing up beyond belief for a decade and still recover. And it was almost like a permission just to go run and try, like just go see what happens. And he's like, you're so young, you could recover from it. But what he said was, if you drop this one ball, you might never pick it back up. And of course, that was family and relationship. Like that one's not made of rubber. That one's made of glass. And there's none of us who haven't dropped it somewhere. It's almost like you drop a glass in the kitchen and you look down and it doesn't break and you go, oh my God, that's so lucky. Like you drop your iPhone and it doesn't break. You're like, oh my God. But then you could drop your iPhone 6 inches and it shatters across the whole glass and you're like, oh my gosh. But I always think like, which of these can't be dropped? Yeah. I can drop work. I could miss a sale. I could miss an expansion partner. I could miss a country that we're expanding, whatever. I made up all this stuff anyway. Like I made it to the 9th grade, didn't go back to school. So everything I've achieved in my business life is all just a made up story anyway. But I can't recreate and I can't go back in time. A missed conversation with a kid, a missed relationship milestone, like those things, you don't get second shots at all of those.
And I think, Cody, what I think about all the time and what I think is really the most humbling experience as a parent, and tell me if you felt this way, when I look at my daughter, like my daughter doesn't give a shit what I've accomplished. Like, right. When she looks at me, she couldn't care less about how many people came to this class or how many people were in the room and how many stages I've stepped on and countries that we've expanded to. And like, your kids don't care. They probably don't really know even what you know. Yeah, exactly. Like they don't care. What they care about is how you show up for them. And then I thought to myself, isn't that really true for everybody that we meet? Like, isn't that really true? I mean, you're absolutely right. Success is made up anyway. This is, we're all being measured by someone else's measuring stick, and it's all arbitrary anyway. And doesn't it count for anyone that we interact with that it's how we make them feel and how we show up for them and how present we are in the moment with them that really matters. That's what makes great leaders, not just at home, but also at work. And this is where, to me, it's not about defining what success looks like at one or at the other. It's who do you want to become, such that by becoming it, you can be successful at both.
Probably the best, I mean, I don't know, there's lots of definitions, but the definition I like the most of success is doing what you want, when you want, with whom you want. Like that's what I define success personally as. And of course, I mean, I don't know where Tony Robbins heard it, but that's where I heard it from. But how do you control? So let me ask you this. Like, let's get a couple of like direct, very pinpointed questions. How do you control your phone, email, contact? Like, how do you control that when you're at home?
It's funny that you asked this, because everywhere in my life, I'm always looking for the leading domino. I'm sure a lot like you are, right? Like what's the one thing that I need to change, or the habit that I need to create, however small it is, that's going to impact how I move through the world. And my phone, I'm sure like everyone else is on here, and I'm sure like yours, was a huge problem for me. Like if I look at it right now, I'm going to get anxiety because I have like 57 unread text messages. Because I know if I read it, I won't respond right now. And then it's just going to sit there forever.
I just feel like a loser because I don't have 57. So now I just feel like no one wants to send me anything.
I'll just send you.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for that.
And over and over.
I feel like you're bragging right now. Like nobody sends me anything.
Don't worry, Cody. I'm just going to throw your phone number up on the chat so everyone can send you a message.
Yeah, they still won't, but that's okay. Yeah.
And so what I did is I just turned off notifications, like as stupid and as easy as that sounds, because I know if that stupid thing lights up, I'm going to look at it. Right. Like
I don't know how you don't. Like if it dings, I'm going to look. I am Pavlov's dog. I will look. Totally. I don't know how not to.
Yeah, exactly. I am a slave to the light showing up on that phone. Like I know it. And so I've just turned notifications off. So I know that if I'm going to be in that phone, I'm going to be intentional about it. If I'm going to be looking at it, I'm going to be intentional about it. I'm going to go through my email on purpose. And that's really what I look at, is if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it on purpose, right? I'm not going to scroll through Instagram mindlessly because because my phone controls me. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it on purpose. And I'm going to, give myself the free time and the space to look at it. How do you handle it? That was one of the first hacks for me. Was
totally like, first it was buzz and it was vibrate, and then it was no, and then it was just the screen, and then it was nothing. Like silent, silent, silent. Like every time I get a new phone, that's the first thing I do with it. Silent, silent. It doesn't ring, doesn't buzz. It doesn't even pop up on the screen. Like there's literally freaking nothing. Because when the text used to show up and it was half the text, I'd read half, my
100%.
brain would make up the rest of the story. And it was never positive. It was always negative.
Of
And
course.
so as dumb as it sounds, I have to physically go to my text. I have to physically go to email, like nothing pops up. And I do understand, like, I mean,
we need to talk.
like I get it. I worked with a coach for a while who, like, he really tried to get me to have like business hours. I didn't want to. I mean, to me, I think that's ridiculous. I don't like it. I won't do it. If you want to do it, have at it. Like, it's just not my jam. It's not my story. I love what I do. I like doing it. I like working borderless. I like working I mean, I've never worked harder than I'm working right now. Like during COVID, during what's happening, like I'm up earlier than I've ever been. I'm up later than I've ever been. I'm making more moves than I've ever made. Like part of that is the world we live in. You and I, none of us have a playbook. I was speaking in Phoenix this week and I was like, listen, look to your left and look to your right. The person next to you doesn't freaking know what to do. They don't know what to do. None of us have lived through this before. None of us have doubled or tripled our business during a global pandemic before. Like we're all literally at scratch. We are all making this shit up as we go. And I don't think that's wrong. I think there's a bit where you just go, oh, okay. So here's what I do. When it comes to like my phone and like an iPad, a couple of things. I work really hard. I have to plug it in and put it somewhere inconvenient for me, like a different room, a counter. For a long time, I had this little counter, and I would leave my phone plugged in there, like in the evening. And if it was important enough to me to go and stand there and do something, then great, have at it. But I wouldn't put a chair next to it. The second there was a chair and I'd sit down, 5 minutes turned into 30.
It's over.
Yeah. And if you're a parent who's also an entrepreneur, you know what I mean by being in the same room as your family, but you might as well be 100 miles away. Like my daughter, Maris, especially, who's 12, almost 12, like she's the first to call me out on it. I've got the book, How to Break Up with Your Phone. And more than once, she's gone to where the books are and grabbed it and brought it to me.
I love that.
And it's just like it just hits you. And so here's what I do, like just little bumpers. I'm not going to go all evening and not touch it. Like a coach one time was like, hey, I want you to take a vacation for a week and not take your phone. I was like, screw you. I'm not doing that. Like that doesn't sound fun to me. I don't like that.
No.
By the way, that person's probably 30 years older than me. Like we live different lives.
Yes,
I'm
completely.
unwilling to do it. Won't. Yeah. I want to know what's going on. I want to work and I want to touch it, but I also want, like, I want to do all those things and I want to grind and I want to put in hours, but I also want to be a present dad.
And I think what's important about that, Cody, though, is that you're creating the parameters for yourself, right? Like I'm sure whether it's set in stone or not, you've created a schedule for yourself such that by creating it, you can make time for what matters most when it matters most, right? Like you're not making time for your kids at 10 o'clock at night when they're already asleep. I know for me, I'm in the same boat, right? Like I'm up earlier now because I have to be. My kid's up at 6 a.m. So I need to be up way before her if I want to get the time in that I need to set myself up for the day. And then I tackle some emails after she goes to bed because that's not something I typically work on during the day, and it's got to get done at some point, right? So I'm in the same place, and I think it's unrealistic. And I'm not someone who's a big fan of setting myself up to fail from the standpoint that it's just, I know you have to know thyself, which is exactly what you're talking about. And I know myself well enough, and you know yourself well enough, that like to go on vacation without your phone would cause more anxiety than it would like a stress-free experience, right? Yeah. So instead, create parameters for yourself that are realistic. Create numbers for yourself where you can actually succeed.
I'm going to eat the chocolate cake.
100%.
100. Like I'm going to eat it. Like I'm like, if I see chocolate cake, if there's nobody in the room, I'm going to make love to it. Like I love it. I'm not going to pass up the chocolate cake. I'm not going to do it.
Quote of the day.
Right. Yeah. No one's listening anyway, but like, I'm like, it's like you would teach your kids. Like I would teach my son, Gavin, you're better off to say, I'm not going to go to the party than to say, I'm not going to drink or do drugs when I get to the party.
Yeah.
You're better just to skip it. Don't put your, like, I've learned my weaknesses. By the way, I've always known them. Anything that I say besides that to myself, like one of the smartest people I know said, it's okay at times to be full of shit. Everybody is at times. It's just when you buy it from yourself, that's the ultimate sin. Like when it comes to success, don't buy your own story, don't buy your own stuff. And so for me, like, I can't have it. And so I have to, like, I literally have to lock myself away from things that I don't have any strength against.
Well, what I love that you said earlier, Cody, is that how your daughter like pulls the book off of the shelf. And what's great about what you're saying is it's about knowing ourselves well enough to be able to set ourselves up to succeed, not set ourselves up to fail, but also to have that conversation happening around us. And here's what I know. My parents had kids really young, like they were like 14 and 15, and so yeah. So when you're that, like your children raising children. And so like, they didn't know what to do. They had no idea what, creating a perfect home life was about. And so they just told us everything, like even the things we quote unquote weren't supposed to know. And my dad ended up becoming an entrepreneur, and he would include me in those conversations, how he failed epically, like what was going well, what was happening in his business. Like we just talked about it. And the beauty of what you're saying is that you can bring your children into the conversation, because I think that the greatest disservice that a lot of parents make to their kids is that they don't talk enough about the struggles. Like they don't talk enough about what's challenging for us. Like you end up not becoming a real person, which therefore then your kid gets into real life and is like, wait, this is hard. Bad things happen. To bring them on the journey and then to give them permission to interact with that journey. It's a gift. It's a gift to them so that they can grow up knowing dad has these weaknesses. These are apparent and we have conversations about them. What are mine? How can I hack success for my own self in order to be more productive based off who I naturally am as a person?
How do you handle growth in your personal relationship? Like so many people, this is year 16 or 17 at KW for me, year 21 in real estate. But especially with KW, or I mean, forget KW for a second. If one person is making giant leaps and bounds with like personal development, it's almost like you're on two different train tracks sometimes with your partner. And you're like, I'm doing this and this and this, and I'm saying affirmations and I'm reading stuff to myself and I'm doing all these things. And then you look over and you're like, huh? Like your partner is not at the same level as you. Now, I mean, I love weddings. I've been to quite a few. They're usually my own. So I've done well and done not well with this. But you're still in one. So how do you manage that when you're like, you're growing or not, and your partner, like, it doesn't seem to be equal anymore? What do you do with that?
I'm in it a decade later, and which is weird to say, over a decade later. And so what's cool about
hang on a second. Hang on. A decade, like consecutively? Because I've got a decade or more. It's just with little breaks in between. Like,
I know.
My problem is like the consecutive time.
We've been consecutive. So
all right. Here's there you go. Cool. Bragging again. There you go.
Here's all what's cool and what's been challenging about that. And I love this question because I think it's a really important one, that when you're preparing to be in a relationship, that that people don't teach you how to have this conversation. And I would argue that it's the most important one that we have. And to that end, it's what are we going to do when we disagree? What are we going to do when we're on different paths? Like how are we going to handle it when we're going different directions? And I met my husband when I was 19. And so we've grown up together, truly. And so we've had this fission in our relationship many a time, right? Whether it was him growing faster than me or me growing faster than him. And there's been a couple times where I was like, I don't know, we might be going very different directions. And the cool thing about it is I think that you found the right partner when you can sit down and have that conversation openly. And I think the best thing that we did is when we met, I said, listen, I'm not into like the whole marriage thing. So if that's like something that you want to do, I feel like I should just probably let you know that. I'm kind of impartial. But this is what I want my life to look like. Everything that happens outside of this is like not super important to me, but this is where I'm going. So you need to know that before we go. And truly it's the best thing that we ever did, because at multiple occasions in our relationship, I've had to say like, my plan hasn't changed, and things change for us. Like we ended up getting married, and
I
like,
was gonna say you caved on that.
yeah, I did. I caved.
Yeah. You were full of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was completely full of it. I mean,
Mhm.
it was the greatest chess move ever, right? Like you tell someone you don't want to get married, and they're like, all they want to do
Yeah,
is
it's the for
get
sale
married.
by owner that says I'm never going to list with an agent, and
For
88%
sure.
of them do.
Yeah,
I
it's
get
like
it.
when you put the GPS in your phone, it says it's going to take 25 minutes to get there, and it's like challenge accepted. I'm going to get
Yep.
there in 20, right? And so we had that conversation at the beginning. And so at multiple times we've been able to come back to that conversation and said, I'm still headed here. Are you still on board? Like, is this still where you want to go? And in order to get there, if you are on board, you're going to have to change. Like things are going to have to evolve. And I think what helps is when you were young, Cody, did you ever get like growing pains, like physical growing pains when you were growing? I used to get them so bad that I had to go to like physical therapy for them to like massage them out. And it's funny because after we get through that, we forget that personal growth feels exactly the same, right? Like it's painful and it's ugly and it's messy and it's confusing. And it's not until we click through and break through and get to the other side that we look back and say, oh, I see what was happening there. And so I would say for us, it's that I had a clear direction and he was on board with that direction. And we've had that conversation on multiple times. And here's where I think it's worked for us so far is that at any time, we both had the agreement that if either of us decides, like I'm clear on where I'm headed, but I said at any time, if you want to get off that train, like we're good. No harm, no foul. I will love you forever. You're my partner for life. Like if this is where you want to go, but I'm going. And so if at any point you feel like that's not the destination for you or the life that you want, that's okay. Right. But I've been clear from the beginning, which I think clarity in relationships is freedom and it's kindness. Because if you're not clear and you change, then that's when you can have a challenge.
I think for me, and then we'll move to a different topic. Failure is probably the biggest teacher, like it has been for me. And the interesting thing about failure, and one of the things I teach people like that I work with or coach with, whether it's personal or professional, failure will always be the teacher. It doesn't have to necessarily be your failure. And that's what we mean by when we talk about learning from others' mistakes, right? Like the first place I ever expanded in real estate was a city that had no KW. And so we had to expand with a different franchise. And it was a giant mistake. We learned a lot. Like, I'm glad we did it. But we teach today why you would never, ever do that. And here's why. There's a whole page like in expansion system around it. And it was from our lessons, right? So you're always going to learn from lessons. You don't have to be the one who makes them, though. But my point would be, like, for me, I think, and like, I've often thought, like, I won't be in another long-term relationship romantically without being in relationship coaching, which most people call counseling.
Oh yeah.
And there's just like a stigma around that word, but like what would it look like to go when you don't need to? What would it look like to go when you don't have like a big problem to talk about? Because most of us wait until like there's a challenge, and then sometimes like there's too much water under the bridge, or you can't, put the cow back in the barn, or whatever analogy you want to use. But what would it look like to go when you're like, we have nothing bad to talk about? Like we got nothing. Like, let's just sit here and talk for 40 minutes. And like, I've got, like, I realized at one point, anything I really care about in my life, I have a coach, or I have had a coach, whether it's Ironman, or whether it's lifting, or whether it's work, business, expansion, leadership, food. Like, I can't think of anything that I've cared deeply about that I didn't engage a coach, except personal romantic relationship.
And
And it's like, what a mistake.
Yeah. And what's funny about that is I go back to like that we separate these ideas of success here and here, but they're so the same. Because if we look at it, I mean, how often you meet with your team? I'm sure weekly, and I'm sure you're interacting with them like almost every other day, you know, if not every single day. And then it's like, how often do we meet with our spouse and with our family to check in on here's where we are and here's where we want to go, right? Like that's where we have had the ability to make small changes in our relationship as we needed to, or had the small conversations before they become the big conversations,
Like,
right?
what are
And that
your, yeah, like, what are your dreams?
yeah, like
Like,
are
where do you
we
want to
yeah,
go?
do we still have the same dream, right? Like or do both of our dreams fit inside this life that we're building? Like are we still on the same page? And I think that you're right. Most people don't give themselves the gift of having that conversation in a relationship. And if we don't, then you're right. But we wait so long that by the time we have that conversation, the fission is just too deep, right? Like the space between where we are and where we need to be is just way too far, and we're usually not willing to come back to the middle and make it up.
I will say one thing that you might consider doing is bring the goals home. Like if it's to take 10 listings this month, or if it's to um, find 10 sellers this year, like whatever it looks like for you, right? Bring it home so your family can see it. Like, don't be afraid to walk through it with them. Don't be afraid to be like, yeah, I'm working on this or this or this. Cause it's so easy sometimes to hide all that. And then nobody knows what you're doing. And every realtor understands what it looks like to work so hard for your client, but they don't see it. Like they don't see the conversations that they never know about. They don't see the things that almost died that they never know about, right? And we could probably all do a better job of explaining it so they know what we're doing, so that like we understand the value. But when I think about that, what I think is I think clients come and go, buyers and sellers come and go, team members to a degree come and go. Like everyone's going to come and go. You're going to have like, there was a meme that I saw on Instagreasy, and it was you're going to have a last day with everybody in your life. You just don't know when it's going to be.
Yes.
And it was one of those that you hit and you just go, oh my God, I'm going to have a last day with my daughters and my son. I just don't know when it's going to be. Lacey, my executive assistant right now, is the best I've ever had, but I'll have a last day with her. I just don't know when it's going to be. And like you think about that and you go, oh my gosh. And it kind of goes in line with another thought that I have, which is at this moment, you know more than you've ever known your entire life. You know the most you've ever known. But also at this moment, you know the least you will ever know. And you're like, oh, wow. And it leaves you in this space. But bring those goals home. Like let people know, like, what are you working on? Allow them to walk through it with you. That helped me with affirmations. Like our family does affirmations together, and that helps me to remind me to do my own. But I agree. One of your points early on, and I know we only have 5 or 6 minutes left, but the idea of why do we separate them? Like to me, they're yoked. Like to me, they're tied. If I'm winning at work and killing it, I mean, I don't know about you, but I can go to bed at night losing money. I can go to bed at night with the biggest business problems I've ever faced and sleep like a baby. But if something in my personal world is jacked, I can't eat, I can't sleep. Like it's a showstopper for me, because it tells me the business stuff, it comes and goes, man. It just, I mean, I could recreate all of it.
Yeah, well, that's also it's what counts, right? Like who we get to be in life with is what really counts, and it's really what fills us up at the end, right? Because you're right, and what Gary said to you when you know at the when you were building all of this, you're right. Like I think about it all the time. Tomorrow, someone asked me the other day, they're like, "What if you had to start over?" I was like, "Oh God, it'd be so much easier. Like I'd know what not to do, right?" And I would be willing to start over in business. I'm unwilling to start over in my personal life, right? Like the attachment that I have to the people I'm close with, whether it's my husband, my daughter, my family, my friends, like the friends who've become family, like that I'm unwilling to let go of, right? And
That's why calendaring is so important. Like as dumb as it sounds, like if we fail to plan, then we're planning to fail.
And I think, I don't know about you, but this has been the greatest gift of COVID for me. My husband and I had a great day right before my daughter was born, where we were like really in the thick of COVID. And I was dealing with obviously running a very large ship while very pregnant through a pandemic. And, you know, you're right when you say no one knows what to do. Like, I'm looking for direction to all these people who know more than me. And they're like, we got nothing. We don't know either. And he was dealing with the same thing in his business, and we can hear each other, right? Like, we're working in the same house. I'm here overhearing his conversations. We're trying to coordinate Zoom and conference calls so you can't hear background noise. And that night we sat down together, and he said something, and we had one of the best conversations of our relationship. He sat down, he said, I had no idea like who you actually are when you leave this house. He said, gosh, listening to you today was so cool. He's like, I didn't know how many plates you spin. And I said, I had no idea who you are. I've never gotten to see you actually work. What you do is so cool. And I've gotten to be on this journey with you as you've grown. I remember the beginning. And to me, that's been the greatest gift of COVID that we've had personally, is that like, we just got to put each other in this whole new perspective of like, wow, you are an incredible human being, and I'm so lucky that I get to be around you. And I think that we lose that when we don't have those conversations, when we don't share the goals, when we don't share the good and the bad of what happened today. And he started helping me through things that I would never have asked him about before. He was like, hey, why don't you try this? And I was like, why don't I try that? Who knew? You're like a smart guy, right? But we don't involve the people at home because we separate them, and they're just not separate. They're just not.
You know, one thing that you might consider doing, like here's a couple of like just specific things. I'm constantly looking for me, I'm looking for the minutes in between. I know that in my world, I'm probably not going to buy back days. I'm probably not going to buy back hours and hours at a time. Like, I'm not hanging out watching TV throughout the day and just poof, that's going to change. So what I am looking for is, where do I find 5 and 10 minutes here, 5 and 10 minutes there? And then how can I put those together to equal hours? It's kind of like, if you watch the pennies, the dollars take care of themselves, right? It's that idea. But one thing that you might consider doing, and I've given this advice every time I've coached directly with somebody, is everybody understands, like, you know, the old analogy of, if you don't have a housekeeper, you are one. Like, I don't even like that saying, but whatever. But I'll tell you, one of the things for me, and it might not be for somebody else, the cheapest thing for me to leverage that had the biggest win back of time was the freaking laundry.
Oh yeah.
As dumb as that sounds, like, I'm really good at washing and drying. Like, I'm great. You will not find somebody better at putting stuff in the washer. I'm good at it. But when it comes out of the dryer, it's the folding and the putting away. And it's like on me. Like, it's on me.
Like we have the laundry chair. Like, you just throw your clean laundry there, and you just pick it out until you got to do your laundry again.
But I hired it out. Like, I don't know, this might be year probably 7, probably 6 or 7. It's at least 5 years where like somebody else folds it, somebody else puts it away. And it sounds like I've made that statement and had people say, well, that's really silly, and you should just be able to do your own. And it's like, well, screw you. Like, we can just live our own lives and keep our opinions to ourselves. But for not a lot of money, for a very small amount of money, I got rid of a giant headache. Tell you the truth, I'd rather clean the kitchen than do the laundry. I'd rather mow the yard than do the laundry. I don't want to do any of them, and I don't. But if I had to choose, I would choose that. And that would be something that I would tell you, like, you could find those minutes in between. You could find those times. Like, I've got a house manager. At this point in my life, like, my house manager lives in an apartment in my house. And I'll make dinner for the girls, and then she'll clean up the kitchen. And for a long time in my life, I couldn't afford that. But one of the things I've learned along the way when it comes to money is that if you're short on money, you use your time to make more money. Then when you have money, you use your money to buy your time back. But there's times in my life that I've looked down and I thought that I had a money problem and a time problem simultaneously. And every time I think that, I have to stop and go, that's impossible. Mm-hmm. I can't have a shortage of money and a shortage of time. Can't. I could think I do, but that's when I have to step back and go, nope, I got to look at this deeper. Because if I'm short on money, I'm going to use my time. But if I'm short on time, I'm going to use my money.
And I think that, Cody, where I've seen this, like, I'm so privileged to have been at this company where I'm around people like you, around other amazing business people who shared these principles early on, because I can see how we're allured by this idea, like, especially women, that, like, to me, it's so stupid, but we're sort of fed this story that we need to be the mom that does it all. And it's so unnecessary, and it's such a lie, and it's such a barrier between you and really living the life that you want to live. And I think I was lucky to walk into this parenthood journey with incredible mentors around me who gave me permission to not be the person that does it all. And
Moms
that's
have it the
what I
worst.
did.
Like as moms, you guys have it the worst. I'd be the first to say, like, I'm an incredibly engaged, incredibly active dad. I'm a great dad. No problem. I'm good. But moms have it harder. And the reason is because there's a wiring. My kid's mom, Abby, like, I love my kids, love them. And I mean, you won't find a more involved dad. But when it's winter time, it is always her that goes, hey, they need new winter jackets. And I go, oh, yes, they do. Let's get some winter jackets. She's the one who thinks they need new rain boots. Like there's just a wiring. It's just like I gave up on this a long time ago. Moms, you're just wired different. Like it's the reason why moms, once you have a baby, you never sleep a full night after that. A dad, I could sleep through a gun going off in the room. Like I'm okay. Like it's I hope they make it. Feast or famine, live or die. But moms, you guys can't do it.
Well, and I think it's important to have that conversation, because you're right. We take the mental and emotional burden of coordinating all of those things. And it's funny because I was talking to a friend of mine who also runs a really big business and is a new mom, and she said, my husband helps me a lot. I said, no. Your husband doesn't help you. You guys are a team.
Yeah,
It's not
husbands don't babysit, you jerks.
exactly. It's not.
Yeah,
It's
they're
not
your
your job.
kids. Yeah.
But it's just, even the language. It's even the language is, oh, he helps me. Like the burden
Right.
is solely on you. But what
Right.
we haven't learned, for the most part, a lot of women, is to raise our hand and be like, hey, we need help. And you're right in that my husband's the same. He would love to help, but he's not going to think to do it. So I have to say, hey, this is how we're splitting everything up this week, right? Like this is your job. This is my job. This is how we're going to split it up. And by the way, it works, right? It works. And I love that conversation, because I think for me, I wouldn't be able to juggle all the plates that I could if I hadn't released myself early on to, there's just no way I can do it all and do it all well. And I don't need to be the mom that does it all. It's funny, I was talking to Carissa on my team before this, and my daughter's first birthday is coming up. And I was like, who knew the parent world is a weird one. Like, who knew you got to have themes for this stuff? I was like, this isn't my
You better
thing.
get your shit together so it looks good on Instagram.
Exactly.
You better get the right balloon.
Wall.
You better get the
Yes.
right shirt. You better get the right number to hold up. You better not screw this up, Nikki.
I know, because she will be forever changed if I do, right?
You're screwed.
And so I said to her, I'm like, this isn't my thing. I'm raising my hand. I need help, right? And it's so important to be able to recognize that being able to do it all is a lie. And the people who look like they're doing it all are just highly leveraged. That's the truth. Or they're not doing it all well, right? So it's about understanding where we can leverage and where it doesn't matter. Like, your kids don't care if you're the one that gets dinner on the table. They just care that they get dinner on the table and that you guys get to eat together. So whatever that looks like for you, it's the results that matter, not the avenue or the direction or the map, however you want to look at it, in order to get there.
The things that you're naturally a 2 or 3 at on a scale of 1 to 10, be careful how much time you put into them.
Yeah.
Because you could put a ton of time into it and maybe be a 5, which is mediocre. The stuff that you're a 6 or an 8 at, naturally, put your time there. Like naturally, if you're really good at fun, then lead your business with fun, lead your family with fun. But if you're like a level, like I was training a bunch of speakers once, and one said, well, where will it be appropriate to use humor? And they were basically asking, am I funny? And I said, if you have to ask, the answer is no. Like, just don't. Like, don't do it. Like, that's not your jam. You need to teach this way. Like, that's not going to be your thing. And so, like, as a parent, I've been real clear. Like, for me, there's things that I'm naturally a 7 or 8, and I think about rivers, and I think about swimming downstream instead of upstream. Like, I love vacations. I love planning vacations. Like you won't find somebody who's more involved. Like every relationship I've ever been in, I've always been the planner. Like, let's go here, let's get these tickets, we'll stay at this hotel. Like, and they're like, oh my God, thanks for putting all this together. But it's never a burden. I naturally enjoy it. I like doing it. Yeah. And so like with the kids, like that's what I like doing. And I'm really clear about living. I'm really clear about living the things that I'm naturally inclined to do or I'm good at, so that they see it. Because I don't want them to grow up. One of my unwillings is I'm unwilling for my kids to grow up and think and have this burden that they're supposed to be good at everything.
Yes.
They won't be good at everything. Like, I mean, you can't tell me my kids are bad at something, but I will tell you my kids are terrible at this. Like they are jerks when it comes to this. They're the worst. Like I don't even, like, they're horrible. If you say it, we're going to fight. Everybody understands that, right? But like as a parent, I'm like, nah, like this isn't their thing. Like this is their thing. Let's go do more of this. Like let's spend more time at this. And I think as parents, but even as leaders, like the people in your real estate businesses or your businesses, like the stuff they're good at, allow them just to put an inordinate amount of time there, because that's where they're going to excel.
This is where we fight success, isn't it? Like this is where we really fight success. We end up getting ourselves in a position where we're fighting against what is our unique ability by trying to do all of the things that we're not good at, that drain our energy and that frankly we don't like.
Or I don't want to do it. Like, I mean, like I can force myself, but here's the deal. Like I'm not going to force myself that freaking long. Like I am not a 4 a.m. wake up and go to the gym guy. I've tried and I could make it for 6 months. But it always comes back. It's just not what I prefer. And so instead of forcing myself, I mean, we've all heard the old saying of forcing a square peg in a round hole or vice versa. But sometimes when you force it, all you end up with are splinters.
Yes.
Just find a different way to win. Like we have this idea that things are supposed to look a certain way. Listen, nothing's supposed to look a certain way. Like it's like the idea that like there is no timeline. You're not supposed to be in an amazing relationship at a certain time in your life. You're not supposed to have kids by a certain time in your life. You're not supposed to make your first $1 million by a certain time in your life. To hell with all of that. Like none of that means anything. Like where are you at in your journey? Where are you today? Where do you want to be? And are you moving towards it? Because if you think of it this way, forward movement, even an inch, is still forward movement. Like I've never been the fastest at something, but I just won't give up. Like I'm unwilling to stop. Like I'll wake up tomorrow and try it again.
And I think that that's really where success happens. I mean, before everybody jumped on, we talked about both success and failure have compound interest, right? They're both slowly and then all at once. Like we don't get divorced all of a sudden, right? Like you don't just wake up one day and hate each other. It's slowly and then all at once. And it's the same thing for when you fall in love. It's slowly, it's the little things and then all at once, right? And then you wake up one day and you're like, oh my God, here we are, right? And success and life is a lot the same way, right? It's what are you doing every day that moves you forward or backward? And then eventually when all of those things accumulate, where are you? And so for me, I look at it as I agree with what you said. It's that we have to be clear on what we are unwilling to accept or to do anymore. And for me, I look at it as, okay, who do I want to be? And as a result of becoming that person, what might I also achieve? And then how do I take steps every day in order to become more of that person? And as a result of becoming that person, this is what's going to happen around me.
Your list of unwillings needs to be pretty short.
Yeah.
Like a handful of things. Like, I mean, and they're all applicable, right? Like they all have their own worlds. So when it comes to health, I've got a short list of unwillings. When it comes to a love life, I got a short list of unwillings. When it comes to being a dad, you get my point. Like all those things, my business, a short list of unwillings. But what I have to do is remind myself these unwillings, whether it's 8 or 10 things or 5 things or whatever's appropriate, these are golden. Like these don't get screwed with. And if they do, we fix it right away. But what I have to remind myself is I can't have it both ways, which means outside of this list, I got to be real fluid, man. I got to be really good with whatever happens. I got to be really good with, well, that's not the way I envisioned it. And fine, no problem. Like I'm good. Like, I mean, I think that like in relationship and in business, we have to remind ourselves that attitude determines altitude. Because I turn into a giant baby. If I don't get my way, and I'm not careful, I turn into a giant baby and I mope around and I sulk and I'm not happy. And you can tell, right? And any of us that are entrepreneurs, most of us are wired this way. Like most of us wear our emotions on our sleeves. You're not hiding shit. Like you're not hiding anything. Everybody knows how you feel.
Yeah, we know who you are.
Yeah. And so like for me, there's just been this thing of, okay, if it's not in one of these sacred unwillings, I'm good, man. I'm good. Like it's okay. Like, hey, the flight's 2 hours late. No big deal. Being upset's not going to make a difference. Like my kid did this instead of that. No big deal. It doesn't fall in a sacred category. The sacred ones, I'll go to war. But that's why you can't have a very long list. You can't be going to war all the time. Nobody wants to hang out with you.
And what's important about that though, Cody, is that like once you have clarity on that, I think the most important thing you can do in every aspect of your life is to share it. Share it often, share it loudly, share it across all of your relationships, because, and I'm sure you have that category for your health, for your friends, for your significant other, for your, for your kids. And if they're all clear on that, I say often to everyone in my life, clarity is kindness. Like we need to be clear about who we are and how to interact with us.
We've all got pants that when we have to wear them, we know it's time to stop. We're like, nope, when I got to wear these, it is time to fix this. Like stop eating. Like we've all got it.
Yes. And if we're clear with the people around us on what that is for us, then they know how to interact with us. Like we've just set ourselves up to win in that category. So I would ask, because I'm curious, and we could finish up with this because I know we're butting up on our time. If you could attribute who you are now to one skill or one action or one habit, like who you are everywhere, right? Not Cody the business person, but Cody the human being, like the human being I know you're proud to be. If you could attribute it to one skill or habit or action, what would it be?
It's a word. I like words. I put it on my body this last year. It's the word resilience. Like I'm real clear, like for me, one of my unwillingnesses is to not be resilient. Like resilience. I'm not too worried about failing. I'm not too worried about shit going wrong. I'm not too worried about losing money. I'm not too worried about any of those things. What I worry about is how do I maintain my resilience? How do I bounce back? How do I get back up? Like, can I become accustomed to and great? Like, can I become modeled behavior at getting up when I'm down? Can I become modeled behavior when stuff isn't going my way? Like some of the things I tell myself, one is this is a storm. It's not a lifetime. Like I got some challenges in the business right now. We've expanded to a few countries and we don't know how to get paid. We have a money problem. And it's like, all right, well, let's go solve it. But this is a storm. It's not a lifetime. Another, and this one, I mean, I don't know, probably everybody could benefit from this. It doesn't have to be my way. But I get stuck on it, man. Like, especially being like a hard charger and a driver and an achiever like you, like I have to remind myself, just breathe. Doesn't have to be my way. Just breathe. It doesn't have to look the way I thought it needed to look, except just this very small list of non-negotiables, this very small list of unwilling tos, those I'll fight. Everything else, I got to be fluid.
And I think that's where as entrepreneurs, because most of us have that, right? Like that's how you get to where you want to go. You're clear on where you're going. Like I said, I had that conversation early with my husband. Like I am very clear on who I'm going to be and where I'm going. Like you can get on the ship or off the ship. I don't really care, but this is where I'm going. And so I
could say that with a tiny bit more compassion and love though. Like I'm hearing that as if and I'm like, oh, like that hurts my heart. Like I need you to care. I need you to want me on the ship. I think if he saw it and saw me say
he would be like, no, this is not her. This is how she says it to me too. And yet I think we do that with everywhere in our lives. And then we get so stuck on it that we forget that you're right. We can end up where we wanted to be in total vision, but how we get there, who we get there with, when we get there, like that can be flexible. The path through which we take can be flexible. I tell my team often, I'm like, listen, this is where I want to go. How you guys figure it out in between, I'm not like, I don't care. You just figure it out. You got it. Right. And that has taken growth for me because in the past it was like, hey, I want you to do it like this, 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 and this. And then you paralyze everybody around you because you're not teaching them how to think and you're not giving them ownership.
We call people control freaks like it's only some people. I have come to understand every people is a control freak somewhere. Like we all are. Like we all do it. All right. So I know we're out of time. Nikki, what is one thing that you would attribute the success that you've got in your life so far? And we'll end with that. So same question you asked me.
I would say I take action. I am just not afraid to do it. And I think that's been mine forever. Like I believe that action cures fear. So I just go at things. Like I just face life head on and I go. And with every great skill, there's also great weakness. Like sometimes that's left me very messy and with a lot of dead bodies in my wake. And yet I just move and I continue to move and I take action. And if I like an idea, I go and I do it and I'm willing to fail at it and I'm willing to do it badly. But I'm not willing to sit around and theorize about it. Like I'm unwilling to write a business plan and stick it in my drawer and never look at it again. Otherwise it's just wasted time. Like I'm unwilling to read a book and not implement something from the book. I'm unwilling to go to a class and not implement something from the class. It goes against who I am. And so that's always been mine. I'm willing to take action even when I don't totally know what I'm doing, which is 99% of the time. And yet I'm willing to take action on it.
Yeah, like writing a business plan and not doing something with it, or reading a book and not doing something with it, or going to a class and not doing something with it is almost like a mental masturbation.
Yeah, it's just wasted time. And like, this is not intended to be a passive experience. We're intended to take action. Success isn't going to interrupt us. We will have to do something about it. And so that's always been my perspective. In order to get there, like if it's to be, it's up to me. In order to get there, I'm going to have to be the one to do it. And so I just move through things. I go at them, especially when I'm scared of them. Like, yeah, the cliff looks big, let's go jump off of it. Then it'll seem a whole lot smaller, right?
But you get good at it. Like you build a muscle to it. Like you get better at jumping. You get better at running.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you also get better at differentiating when you should slow down a little bit. Like when you should
when
not.
It's foolish. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. When that cliff's a little too big.
Yeah. Not just because it's true once doesn't mean it's always true. It's kind of like winning a fight with your spouse, which every husband knows doesn't happen, but the idea of winning a fight with your spouse, because they remember it forever. But it's like the idea, because what happens is when you win a fight with your spouse, you approach every fight from then on that way. Just like in real estate, like in our businesses, when we build our business a certain way, or we take listings a certain way, or we get a price correction, like whatever it is, right? We attack every problem that way from then forward. Because it worked once doesn't mean it's going to work forever. And it's okay for some things to not be modeled. Some things don't get modeled. Some things don't get duplicated. Like some things are one-off. So, all right, Nikki, thank you for doing this. This has been a blast for me. I've enjoyed it.
This has been so fun. I hope everyone got something out of it. I know Carissa and Lacey are going to throw like our websites and stuff if you guys want the recording in there. But thanks, Cody. This is always a pleasure. But thank you for doing this with me.
All right, gang. If I could help with anything, I'm Cody Gibson at kw.com. I'm Cody Gibson 1 on Instagram. If I can help with something, drop me a line.
Ditto. I'm nikkimiller.com, the Nikki Miller on Instagram. And thank you guys so much for being here. We appreciate you.
All right. Have a good day, gang. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.